Stargate AI investment is the latest move in a broader push by the new Trump administration to drive U.S. leadership in AI development. On day one, President Trump rescinded guardrails put in place by the previous administration and has enlisted prominent tech figures like David Sachs and Elon Musk to lead his administration's AI policies. Joining us now, we want to bring in Ed Mills. He's Raymond James, a Washington policy analyst and managing director. Ed, it's great to have you on here this morning. So very much AI front and center on the heels of this announcement that we're getting from the Trump administration here over the last 24 hours. I'm curious just in terms of maybe to you what this signals about where Trump's priorities lie, and maybe what this also tells us about future investment and future priorities here over the next 4 years.
So, Shauna, if you want to know what Donald Trump cares about above all else, it is investment in the United States. I think this is really interesting to see the fact that Japan, once again, with Moise-san, is leading these efforts. In the Trump 1.0, the relationship between the Japan and the United States was arguably the best. And we had Abe's widow down in Mar-a-Lago announcing $100 billion a couple of weeks ago. Now it's already at $500 billion. Trump is going to want to say it's going higher. He wants things in the United States. And then as it relates to AI, there was a rule out by Joe Biden just last week that wanted to keep it even more in the United States, make sure the chips stay here. I expect that rule to stay because if we can keep AI in the United States, that is a national security prerogative and a big boost to the U.S. economy.
And so even as we're hearing some of that and showing some of the companies on screen here a moment ago, Ed, that are early members of the partnership here, a lot of those have international ties, to your point, as you were mentioning. Where does the cutoff start to emerge? Where does the administration eventually have to say, okay, this is too much international or foreign investment that's also going to have an ear into some of the information and the data and the research and development that's coming forward from the U.S. companies that they had brought previously forward as being a national security concern if there were some of those other entities that did have access to that information?
Yeah, so under the rule that was announced last week is that if you're U.S. based, you need to have at least 50% of your chips here in the United States and 75% of the chips with the United States in our closest allies. Only 25% of those controlled chips can go outside of what is a new wall that has been built among the United States and our closest allies. As you mentioned at the top, there was a rescinding of the executive order on AI by Biden. So the models used to have to be submitted to the government to get approval to move cross-border. My expectation is there'll be something that comes back that tries to limit models for national security purposes, that this is not going to be a completely hands-off kind of topic by the Biden administration or by the Trump administration, but they just thought the Biden administration had gone too far in trying to regulate everything.
Let's talk about the latest developments on tariffs. We heard President Trump threatening to hit tariffs on China here, about 10% tariffs across the board, obviously much lower than what had been initially talked about or some of the rhetoric going back to the campaign trail. But he's targeting China, he's targeting Canada, he's targeting Mexico, also Europe. The market, though, is very much brushing this off. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, isn't it so fascinating, Shauna? We had a macro call yesterday here at Raymond James, and I asked everyone on that call, what do you think is the probability, or kind of do you think that there's going to be a universal tariff imposed this year by Donald Trump? My vote is yes, but 73% of the investors on that call said no. So to me, if we actually get a tariff on February 1st, on China, on Mexico, on Canada, the market's not pricing that in. Now, I think there's a lot of positive things to the economic agenda that the Trump team wants to do. And Team Econ is trying to tell him, go incremental, don't go too far, too fast. But Team Trade is really pushing for him to go very fast, very hard. The establishment of the ERS, this External Revenue Service, shows you just how committed they are to tariffs. So, Shauna, you said maybe it's not as bad as you fear. One of my truisms about DC is it's never as bad as you fear, nor as good as you hope. The market right now is pricing in good as you hope. That's always a dangerous place to be.
Ed, just lastly, while we have you, I want to get your reaction and the significance of delaying the ban of TikTok and now some of the preferred candidates who some of them are what's old is new again and potentially purchasing the social media app. at least the U.S. operation of it.
Yeah, Brad, the challenge for me here in all the conversations I've had with clients of Raymond James is this tension between the executive order and this desire of Donald Trump to be the transactor and what's in the law. So under the law, TikTok is not allowed to currently operate here in the United States. There is an ability for the president to extend it out 90 days, but there's supposed to be a contract. And under the law, there's a $5,000 per user fine. That's $85 billion if you add up 170 million daily active users. So I know that the attorney general is not supposed to impose this, but there's also state attorneys general. There are private parties. So we're in a very tenuous situation. My expectation is as long as China's willing to sell that, this is a deal. But there's still a lot of question in my mind and questions that come into Raymond James on whether or not China's willing to sell it. That, to me, is what I'm focused on.